Greetings and welcome. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and our business policy is honesty is our best policy. So we strive to bring you the real truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. No hype, no fluff or other BS. By doing personal research and relating our experiences of what we have found when we have examined the many religious works of the organized religions, three major religions: Judaism, Christianity and Islam. Our forte being Christianity, ancient Christianity, to the modern Christianity, pseudo-Christianity, etc. And we came across this really old book which may answer some questions from those who are atheists, agnostics, etc. They pose to Christians of many denominations, be they Roman Catholic, Protestant, Jehovah's Witness, etc. This is called Short Answers to Common Objections Against Religion, edited by Reverend L.A. Lambert, LL.D, author of Notes on Ingersoll, etc. I guess it's a Roman Catholic centered or based book, but it just caught our eye and it looked pretty interesting. It's by Ségur, edited by Reverend L.A. Lambert, LL.D, author of this book. Brooklyn, New York, International Catholic Truth Society. Copyright by the Congregation of the Mission of St. Vincent de Paul. I remember them. They are many of these sort of shops, second-hand shops, of clothing and bric-a-brac. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, author's preface. Here is a little book which the author has written especially for you, dear reader, that will displease you perhaps at first sight, but allow me, the author, nevertheless to offer it to you, for that is a sure sign that you particularly need it. A good book, they say, is a friend. I hope whatever you may think of it, that I now present to you one of those very friends. Receive it as one's friend should be received, with kindness and an open heart. I offer it to you in the same way. Although this friend speaks of rather serious things, I have every reason to believe that he will not tire you. I have strongly impressed this upon him, and he has promised not to preach but simply to talk to you. After having read the last chapter, you shall see that he has kept his word. You will remark, no doubt, that the prejudices to which I oppose and answer are of three kinds. Some spring from impiety, they are the worst. I have commenced with them. Others spring from ignorance, others again from a kind of cowardice. I hope the greater part of these objections are unknown to you, and that you have never seriously entertained them. I have, nevertheless, mentioned them as a preservative for the future. It is the antidote which, by way of precaution, I give you beforehand. I pray God that these simple conversations may do you good, that they may win your heart. Having learned by a sweet experience that true happiness consists in knowing, loving and serving God, I have no more ardent desire than to see my own happiness, which is so pure, so solid, become yours also. The intention is good. That is something above all in these times. Is the book itself good? I trust so, but I know my slender skill. You will find, no doubt, many questions treated too briefly, but I have been afraid of tiring you, my dear reader, and I have chosen rather to be incomplete than to put you to sleep. Woe to the book one nods over. As to this one, I advise you not to read too much of it at a time, but nevertheless to read it through from the beginning to the end. Read with reflection, carefully weighing the reasons which I present to you. I beg you above all conscientiously and honestly to seek the truth, not to reject it if it presents itself to your mind. When the heart is upright and sincere, light breaks upon it very quickly. Published preface. It is sad to observe to what an extent belief in the divinity of Jesus Christ, in the immortality of the soul, and even in a personal superintending providence is fast disappearing from among the young men of our day. We have been brought up under Protestant influences. Are not some of our Catholic young men in the danger of being carried away by this tide of infidelity? Can they escape entirely the baleful influences that surround them? Should they not be taught all that is necessary to preserve themselves and be so fortified that the example and teachings would tend to arrest those false principles that are fraught with so much danger to the well-being of society? To effect this, good books are certainly useful, and we know of no book better fitted for this purpose than this admirable work of Ségur. More than 300,000 copies of it have already been circulated. Contents. It's quite a bit there. What have I to do with religion? I have none, and that does not prevent me enjoying excellent health. There is no God. When one dies, there is an end of everything. These are statements and questions people put forth. Everything is governed by chance, otherwise there would not be so much disorder on earth. How many things are useless and perfect bad? It is clear that God does not concern himself about us. Religion is a very good thing for women. It is enough to be an honest man. That is the best religion of all, and it is enough. My religion is to do good to others. Religion, instead of speaking so much of the life to come, ought rather to occupy itself with the present one and destroy its misery. We ought to enjoy life. We must have a good time of it. God is too good to have created us for anything but happiness. The apostles and early Christians were communists. That's interesting. They were poor and had all things in common. They were pursued and hunted down by the civil authorities, just as communists are. There are many learned men and people of mind who do not believe in religion. Priests make a trade of religion. They do not believe what they preach. Priests are drones in the hive. Of what use are they? There are certainly some bad priests. How can they be the ministers of God? Priests ought to marry. Celibacy is contrary to nature. I only believe what I comprehend. Can any reasonable man believe all the mysteries of religion? I would willingly have faith, but I cannot. All religions are good. Is Jesus Christ anything more than a great philosopher, a great benefactor of mankind, a great prophet? Is he really God? Is it better to be a Protestant than a Catholic? One is just as much a Christian, and it is nearly the same thing. Protestants have the same gospel that we have. An honest man ought not to change his religion. We ought to remain in the religion in which we were born. The Catholic Church has had its day. For my part, I want the pure gospel, primitive Christianity. I have my own religion. Everyone is free to practice his religion as he understands it. It is a matter that concerns me only, and I serve God in my own way. Priests are men like others. The Pope and the bishops are men. How can men be infallible? I am willing to obey God, but not men like myself. Out of the pale of the church there is no salvation. What intolerance! I cannot admit anything so cruel. But what have you to say about the massacre of St. Bartholomew? There is no such place as hell. No one has ever returned thence to prove it. There's a lot of questions, a lot of statements made. God is too good to damn me. God has foreseen from all eternity whether I shall not be saved or lost. I may do what I will. I cannot change my destiny. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles the soul. God will never damn me for a morsel of meat. Meat is no worse on Fridays than on any other days. And there's other questions posed, statements posed, and you have the conclusion on page 213. So let's dive deeper into this book. See what they have to say. Short answers to objections against religion. First objection: what have I to do with religion? I have none, and that does not prevent my enjoying excellent health. footnote here. The author begins with the objection of the lowest kind of mere animal man. That was a question posed. Answer. Accordingly, I do not offer it to you as a means of growing in height or enjoying good health. But honestly, are we then in this world only for that? And have we no higher destiny than our oxen, our dogs, and our cats? We're pets. All nations and all times and places have been convinced of the contrary, and it appears strange that you should be right against the whole world. It is about our higher destiny that religion is concerned. Nothing can touch us more closely. Nothing can better deserve the attention of a reasonable man. In fact, according as religion is found true or false, everything changes in the practical direction of our life and our ideas and our most intimate and most important sentiments. Now, not only is it possible that religion is true, but there are many strong arguments in its favour in the immense blessings of civilization which it has spread upon the earth, and in the respect which has been paid to it by so many men of every nation, eminent for their virtues and their genius, such as Bossuet, Fenelon, Saint Louis, Bayard, the Great Conde, Napoleon, Saint Vincent de Paul, Saint Francis Xavier, Saint Francis de Sales, Columbus, Sir Thomas More, Daniel O'Connell, Charles Carroll, and a host of others whose names are familiar to our countrymen. Let me then discuss the cause of religion with you. Believe me, you reject it only because you do not know it. As you represent it to yourself, I can easily understand that it is distasteful to you. But do you represent religion to yourself as it really is? This is the whole question. Alas, what prejudices, what strange errors exist with regard to it. It will not be difficult for me, my dear reader, in these simple conversations, to show you that these prejudices are unjust, that religion is not what its enemies say it is, that not only is it not absurd, but that it is supremely reasonable, beautiful and harmonious, and that it rests upon the most solid proofs. I am going to show you that it is made for you, and that you are made for it. If, like me, you saw it every day, this holy religion, drying the tears of the poor, changing the most hardened hearts, arresting the progress of evil, repairing injuries, softening hatred and dislikes, infusing everywhere resignation, truth, peace, hope and joy into people's souls, you would soon alter your language, and I should have no need to press the subject upon you. But unfortunately, this practical and experimental proof of religion requires rather to be felt than heard of. It is experience and not words that makes us understand its invincible power. You may not have reached that period of life when you will need the helps and consolations of religion, but that time will come for you as it has come for others. Witness the poor soldiers suffering and dying on the fields of battle. Witness their appreciation of the helps of religion afforded to them by the Sisters of Charity, whom even Protestants have called angels of the battlefield. Witness the help of religion to humanity in the various asylums for infants and orphans, the sick, the aged, and the poor. Go to the bedside of the sick and dying. Go to the deathbeds of those who have faith in God and in religion, and witness their peace and content of mind, and you will realize the meaning of their words. Without me, you can do nothing. John 15:5. And also of these other words, I can do all things in him who strengthens me. Philemon 4:13. Nor does religion unfit a man for the duties of this life. On the contrary, it tends to restrain his passions and affords him courage and strength to discharge his various duties towards God and his fellow men, and makes him a law-abiding citizen, a lover of right and justice, who does not shrink from any sacrifice, even that of his own life, at the call of duty. Second objection. This is quite common. There is no God. Answer. Are you quite sure of that? Who then has made the heavens and the earth, the sun, the stars, man, the world? Did all these things create themselves? What would you say if someone were to show you a house and tell you that it made itself? What would you say even if he pretended that it was possible? That he was laughing at you, would you not? Or that he was mad, and you would be quite right. If a house cannot make itself, how much less the wonderful creatures which fill the universe, beginning with our own bodies, which are the most perfect of all. There is no God. Who told you so? Some thoughtless fellow, no doubt, who had not seen God, and these concluded that he did not exist. Is there nothing real but that which we can see, hear, touch, or feel? Does not your thought, that is to say, your soul that thinks, exist? It exists so really, and you know it so evidently, that no reasoning in the world could convince you to the contrary. Yet have you ever seen or heard or touched your thought? See? Then how absurd it is to say there is no God because I do not see him. God is a pure spirit, that is, a being which cannot be brought under the material senses of our body, and which is perceived only by the faculties of the soul. Our soul is also a pure spirit. God has made it in his own image. Some years ago, when irreligion seemed fashionable, a gentleman of talent was taking supper at the same table with some pretended philosophers who sneered at religion and denied the existence of God. The stranger kept silent. The clock was just striking when his opinion was asked. The stranger pointed to the clock and said, "Gentlemen, do you hear the sound of that beautiful clock?" "Yes," they replied. "Well," said the stranger, "the various parts that compose that clock fell together of their own accord and produced that wonderful piece of mechanism." "Why, that's absurd," said the would-be infidels. "And not only that," continued the stranger, "but the big town clock which regulates this one also fell into a happy combination and made itself." "Still more absurd," replied the infidels, growing somewhat impatient. "We did not expect the amusement of being entertained this evening by an inmate of some lunatic asylum." "But that's not all," said the stranger. "There is a bigger clock than any of these. It is a town clock for all towns. One, in fact, which regulates all other timekeepers. They call it the clock of the universe. It's a great dial. The sun, appearing regularly morning after morning, awakens, quickens into activity, and regulates the whole world. And yet some lunatics in our asylum claim that this great clock of the universe made itself." The infidels then became quite friendly with the stranger, who explained to them that just as it is unreasonable and absurd to believe that a clock could exist and keep time without a clockmaker, so it is equally absurd and unthinkable that the earth, moon, and stars could exist and move without such clock-like precision around the sun without the work of a maker's hand. The infidels, seeing at once the force of the argument, admitted that they had never before stopped to consider the matter in their common sense light. The belief of our nation on this point is emblazoned in the dome of the National Library at Washington in these words of the Holy Ghost: "The heavens show forth the glory of God, and the firmament declareth the work of his hands." Psalms 28 verse 2. St. Paul thus points out the existence of God. The invisible things of him, his existence, etc., are clearly seen from the creation of the world, being understood by the things that are made. His eternal power and also divinity. His eternal power also and divinity, so that they, unbelievers, are inexcusable. You've got no excuse. Romans 1:20. Another anecdote is related of the reply of a lady to a celebrated unbeliever of the Voltairean school. He had endeavoured ineffectually to convert her to his atheism. Mortified by her resistance, "I could not have believed," said he, "that in a reunion of people of talent I should be the only one not to believe in God." "But you are not alone," replied the mistress of the house. "My horses, my spaniel, and my cat also have that honour. Only those poor beasts have the wit not to boast of it." Someone's written a note here. I don't know if it says Church's Logic of Theology or something. I don't know. It's incomplete. Can't see it. Okay, Father Kircher and a young infidel. Father Aloisius, who lived in the 17th century, is recognized as one of the greatest scientists of his day. He was in turn a professor of philosophy, Oriental languages, mathematics, Egyptology. He was a voluminous writer on mathematics and physical sciences. In his famous work, Mundus Subterraneus was a real encyclopedia comprising all the geological knowledge of the day. At Rome, he collected an enormous museum of scientific instruments, natural objects, models, and antiquities, and he himself constructed many wonderful instruments. Father Kircher was the possessor of a magnificent globe representing our planetary system. By means of a secret spring, the whole could be set in motion, reproducing in miniature the movement of the Earth and the other planets around the Sun. A young friend of the great scientist called one day just as the priest was about to attend a dying woman. Kindly, the priest invited the young man to his study, there to await his return. Quite naturally, the young man's attention was soon drawn to the splendid globe, and as he was passing his hand over the instrument, he accidentally touched the secret spring, starting the whole mechanism in motion. Lost in admiration of this wonderful imitation of the universe, the priest found him on his return. First question the young man, who by the way was an avowed infidel, asked was, "Father, who is the genius that has made this wonderful instrument?" "Why," answered the priest, "nobody made it. It made itself." "Father," said the young man, "you are but trifling with me. It is against reason, it is an utter impossibility that the splendid and wonderful miniature of our universe should have made itself or be the work of chance." "What?" answered the priest. "You admit that a genius was necessary to make this poor insignificant miniature of the vast universe, and yet affirm that the great universe, of which a single blade of living grass contains more wonders than this paltry globe, had no maker?" For a moment the young man reflected, then dropping on his knees he uttered his first profession of faith. "My God, I believe." In plain English, do you know what that boasting phrase, "there is no God," means? Here is a faithful translation of it. "I am a bad man who am very much afraid that there is someone above who will punish me." And someone's written something here, just the rubric. I'm not really sure if that's what it says. Third objection: when one dies, there is an end of everything. Answer: yes, if you are speaking of cats, dogs, asses, that's probably donkeys, canary birds, etc., but you are very modest if you reckon yourself in the number. First, you are a man, my friend, and not a beast. It is strange that it should be necessary to tell you so. You have a soul, capable of reflecting, of doing good or evil, and that soul is immortal, that beasts have none. That which makes man is the soul. That is to say, that which thinks within us, that which causes us to recognize truth and to love good. This is what distinguishes us from the beasts. This is why it is so great an insult to say to anyone, "You are a beast, you are an animal," etc. It is to refuse to him his highest glory, that of being a man. To say then, "When I die there will be an end of me," is to say, "I am a beast, a mere brute, an animal." And what an animal! I am not of so much value as my dog, for he runs faster, sleeps better, sees farther, has a more delicate sense of smell, etc., etc. Whereas my cat, who sees in the dark, who has no trouble about her apparel, etc. In a word, I am a very inferior beast, the least gifted of animals. If you like that, say it, believe it, if you can, but allow us to be a little more proud than you, and to proclaim loudly that we are men. Doesn't SpongeBob say that? We are men. 'Tis the least you can do on that game. SpongeBob game. What would the world come to if your assertion were true? It would become a regular den of infamy. Good and evil, virtue and vice would be nothing but idle words, or rather odious falsehoods. Someone's put a note here. What to Europe? Okay, and a date. Why indeed, if on one hand I have nothing to fear in a future life, and if on the other manage sufficiently well to have nothing to fear in this present one, why should I not steal or murder when it would serve my interest. Why should I not give myself up to all the excesses of licentiousness? Why curb my passions? I have nothing to fear. My conscience is a lying voice upon which I will impose silence. One thing only is with my attention, that is to avoid the police and the officers of justice. Good for me, as well as for everyone other sensible man, will be to elude them successfully, evil to fall into their clutches. What language, you say? A man must be mad to use it seriously. Very true. And yet, if there is an end of everything for us on the day of our death, I defy you to gainsay this odious, this absurd language. If there be no future state, I defy you to show me what St. Vincent de Paul and the great army of Sisters of Charity are more worthy of our esteem than Tracy the outlaw with his band of highway robbers. Judge of the tree by its fruit, as we are taught by our own common sense, and by the it's got here don't mean we must put something on the next page. Judge of the tree by its fruits, as we are taught by our own common sense, and by the gospel, by horrible consequences. Judge of the principle and dare to repeat us again. When we die, there is an end to us. We shall know henceforth what that means. While it is contrary to common sense, materialism is also contrary to the general and invincible sentiment of the whole human family. Always and everywhere men have believed in the future state. Always and everywhere the innocent who have been unjustly persecuted, the good man who has been unfortunate, have looked forward to another life with justice and happiness which were denied to them in this world. Always and everywhere men have believed in a God who will be the avenger of unpunished crime. In fine, always and everywhere men have prayed for the dead, have hoped to find those whom they love beyond the tomb and in a better world. Why do you weep? Said the dying Bernardine de Saint Pierre to his wife and children. That which you lose in me will live always. It is but a momentary separation. Do not make it so painful. I feel that I am quitting only this earth and not life. Such is the voice of conscience. Such is the voice, the sweet, the consoling voice of truth. Such also is the solemn language of Christianity. It shows us the present life as a season of temporary trial, which God will crown with eternal happiness. It excites us to merit the happiness by self-sacrifice or by the faithful performance of our duty. When his last hour approaches, the Christian yields up his soul. The Christian yields up his soul to God with confidence, and to a pure, holy, and peaceable life, succeeds in eternity of joy. Far from us, then, far from our enlightened country, be this wretched materialism which would snatch from us such sublime hopes. Far from us those errors which degrade the heart, which destroy all that is good, all that is dear and worthy of respect in this world. Far from us be the doctrine which leaves to the suffering and weeping poor, to the innocent who are oppressed, nothing but despair for their inheritance. The human conscience rejects such a doctrine with scorn. Fourth objection: everything is governed by chance, otherwise there would not be so much disorder on earth. How many things are useless, imperfect, and bad? It is clear that God does not concern himself about us. Answer: chance. And what is then this chance? It is an I know not what, that nobody knows anything about, which no one has ever been able to define, which is nothing, a word devoid of sense, invented by the impious to replace the name, so dreaded by them, of providence, a more convenient sort of language, and which has been the appearance of explaining things, but which in fact is but unmeaning nonsense. Chance governs nothing here on earth, because it is itself nothing. It is itself nothing. God alone, the sovereign Lord and only creator of all beings, governs, watches over, and ordains all by his providence. That is to say, in his infinite wisdom, goodness, and justice. He conducts all in general, and each one individually, to their final end by the means which he knows to be the most suitable. Just as he has created all things without an effort, so does he preserve and govern them without becoming weary. And it is no more unworthy of his greatness to concern himself about all his creatures than to make them all. Those who say that God does not concern himself about us are very absurd, to say no worse, for it is as impossible to conceive God without providence as it would be to conceive light without splendour. It is impossible that an all-powerful God, knowing and seeing all things, should abdicate his sovereign empire over his creatures, and after having created them should not govern them. It is impossible that a holy and just God, who must necessarily desire good and detest evil, should remain indifferent to our actions, whatever they be, good or bad. Now that is providence. God does for us what a father does for his children. He watches over us, he teaches us what is right and what is wrong, he shows us the right path we must follow, the wrong one which we must avoid. He punishes us when we disobey him, and rewards us when we fulfill his holy will. When he does not do it in this world, he does it in that which is to come. What can be more simple? The idea of denying this providence, this government of God, would never occur to us if we did not imagine that we saw so much disorder on earth. Why, we often say, is there so much that is useless? Why so much that is bad? Why is this one born poor and the other rich? Why are there so many inequalities in the condition of mankind? Why so many troubles and afflictions among some, and so much prosperity among others? To hear us talk, all is indeed in great confusion, and we would have ordered everything far better. But who told us that what offends us so much is really confusion and disorder? What? Do we judge a thing to be useless in the world because we do not know its use? We think it is bad because we do not know what it is good for? This is certainly a strange pretension. If an ignorant person, not able to read, were to open a volume of Shakespeare and seeing so many unknown letters, arranged in 1,000 different ways, united one to another, sometimes 8 put together, sometimes 6, at other times 3 or 7 or 2, so as to form words, seeing several lines following one after the other, this one at the beginning of a page, that at the end of one, so many leaves arranged, one at the beginning of the book, another in the middle, and others at the end, perceiving some blank little spaces, others covered with printing, here capital letters, there small ones, etc. If I say he were to see all this, of which he understands nothing, and he were to ask why these letters, these leaves, these lines are put in such a place sooner than in another, why that which is at the beginning is not in the middle or at the end, why the 20th page is not the 50th, etc., he would be told, my friend, it is a great poet, a man of genius, who has disposed all this so as to convey his thoughts. And if one page were put in the place of another, if one should transpose not the lines only but even the words or the letters, there would be disorder in this fine work, and the author's design would be destroyed. And if this ignorant person were to pretend to be well informed and undertook to criticize the order of this volume, if he were to say, for instance, but it seems to me it would have been much better to put all the letters that have any resemblance together, the large with those of the same size and the small similarly, it would have been a far finer order had all the words been on the same length, and composed of the same number of letters. Why are some so short and others so long, etc.? Why is there space here and none there? It is all badly arranged, there is no order to it in it. The person who had done it understands nothing of such things, all is left to chance. We should answer him, ignorant that you are, it is you who understands nothing of such things. If all were arranged according to your ideas, there would be neither sense nor reason in that book. All is right as it is. A far higher intelligence than yours presided over and still presides over this arrangement of things. If you do not know the reason of it all, blame only your own ignorance. We are like this when we criticize the works of God. It is his great book that we behold when we cast our eyes over the world. All the centuries are like its pages that follow one after the other. All the years are like the lines, and all the different creatures from angels and men down to the least blades of grass and the minutest grains of dust are the letters disposed each in its own place by the hand of that great compositor, who alone is acquainted with his own eternal conceptions and comprehends the whole of his work. If you ask why one creature is more perfect than another, why this one is placed here and that one is there, why winter is cold and summer hot, why it rains now and not at another time, why this loss of fortune, of health, why that sickness, why that young child's death, why the old man near to it lives on, why that good man is carried off by death, while the bad man who does nothing but evil is spared. I shall reply to you that an infinite intelligence, an infinite wisdom, and infinite justice and goodness has thus regulated these things, and that it is certain that all is in due order, although it may not seem to so to us. I shall reply to you that to judge a work correctly you must know it entirely, you must consider it as a whole and in its details, and compare the means with the end which they ought to attain. Now what man, what creature has ever shared the secret of the eternal counsels of that creature? That would be necessary in order to appreciate the wisdom and justice of providence with regard to reasonable and free men, destined to immortal life, capable of doing good and evil, capable of merit and demerit, and so forth. States here, the orator attacked all belief, even denying the existence of God. Let him speak, then he cried, pointing with his clenched hands toward heaven. Let him speak if he hears me. He had not finished speaking when a terrible thunderclap bursts forth and strikes the blasphemer in the midst of the awed crowd. He was supposed to be dead, but he recovered his senses after a lapse of 2 hours. I doubt if afterwards he ever demanded fresh proofs of the existence of God. Another wretch, more culpable, no doubt, was struck more terribly still in 1849 at a little village near Caen. It was on a Sunday during Mass. This man was with one of his friends at a public house near the church. The sound of the bells aroused his fury. After 1,000 fearful blasphemies against religion and against the priests, seizing his glass and standing before his companion and the landlord, who vainly tried to calm him down. If there is a God, he exclaimed, let him prevent me from drinking my glass of wine. And he fell at the same instant, struck dead by apoplexy. One might add innumerable instances of this kind of divine justice shown forth in this world. These are but specimens, pledges as it were, of the justice which is to come. Yeah, it's like I read years ago of a comedian who says, if there's God, if he exists, may he strike me dead right now. Right? Pause. Stands here a minute or so, looking at the crowd, seeing what their reaction is. See, no God is proof there's no God because nothing happened. But summing it up, it's like, just because you demand it, does he have to do it? No. He possibly does it in other ways. Say, in the case of John Lennon, making a statement, we are more famous than Jesus Christ. Let's talk about the Beatles. Perhaps he was taken out by God. You know, stuff like that. I'm not saying he was taken out by a madman. But yeah, maybe that was, you know, his recompense or something like that. Who knows how God works, right? Why then does God not always justify in this manner his justice, goodness and holiness? The reason is simple enough. It is that this present life is but the germ, the beginning of all that which relates to us, and that the consummation of God's work in us is more fitly to be looked for in eternity, where alone we attain to the perfect development of our being. It is that this present life is a season of faith which believes without seeing, which believes notwithstanding appearances are against it, that which will be one day revealed to its sight when the veil shall be lifted. So forth. Religion is a very good thing for women. Answer. And why not then for men? Either religion is true or it is false. If it is true, it is as true and consequently as good for men as for women. If it is false, it is no better for women than for men, because falsehood is certainly not good for anyone. Yes, certainly religion is a very good thing for women, but also, and for the same reason, it is good for men. Like women, men have passions, often very violent ones, to struggle against, and like women, men cannot conquer them without the fear and the love of God, without those powerful means that religion alone can furnish. For men as well as women, life is full of difficult and painful duties towards God, towards society, towards their families, towards themselves, so forth. 6th objection, it is enough to be an honest man. That is the best religion of all, and it is enough. Answer. Yes, to escape hanging but not to go to heaven. Yes, not in the sight of men, in the sight of God, the sovereign judge. No, it is enough to be an honest man. You say, be it so then, but let us understand each other. What do you call an honest man? That is an expression which appears to be very elastic, remarkably convenient, and which is capable of accommodating itself to many and varied taste. Ask some licentious young man, for instance, if it is possible to be an honest man while leading a more than dissipated life. Yet he does. What a question, he will reply. The follies of youth do not prevent one's being called an honest man. Undoubtedly I claim to be considered such, and I should like to see the person who would dispute my title to it. Then turning to the covetous tradesman who sets off his goods of inferior quality and sells them as if they were first rate, to the artisan who works but half as diligently when he is paid by the day as he does when he is paid by the job, to the master who takes advantage of hard times to rob his workmen of their Sunday's repose. Ask all these persons if what they thus do prevents their being really honest people, and not one of them will hesitate to reply that he is an honest man, and that these little artifices, these tricks of trade, have nothing to do with the question. Ask once more that spendthrift, if his prodigality, that miser, if his avarice, that frequenter of the public houses, if his drunkenness destroys his honesty. Each will claim indemnity for his besetting passion, while he calls himself an honest man. An honest, nay, a very honest man. Thus from these admissions even of the honest man, persons of whom we are here treating, men who are dissipated, dishonest, given to intemperance, misery, usurious, prodigal, dissolute, may be honest men, and no one can refuse them the title, provided they have not stolen any money or committed any murders. Don't you think this numerality is very convenient? Whoever is not brought before the assize court will never have any account to God. In fact, one must no longer examine the heart to judge persons' characters, but the shoulder, and whoever has not the convict's brand is to be reputed fit for heaven. What a religion, then, is the honest man's religion. And you say that is your religion, and the best of all religions, one which permits everything short of robbery and murder, but you do not reflect upon it. It is a perversion of ideas and an atrocious doctrine, and no religion at all. But you say, I mean more by an honest man than is usually meant. I call him an honest man who fulfills all his duties, who does good and shuns evil. And I, on the other hand, reply, and I affirm it, supported by experience, that if you are such a man without the powerful aid of religion, you are an eighth wonder of the world. But I would stake my life that you are no such thing. For you cannot make me believe that you have no passion, no disorderly inclinations. All men have them, and many of them. If then you are naturally inclined to licentiousness, to gluttony or sensual pleasures, what will restrain you? If you are inclined to idleness, to violence, to pride, what will moderate these passions? What will refrain your arm? What will bridle your tongue? The fear of God. But there is no question of that in the honest man's religion. The voice of reason, We know what reason can do in a combat with a violent passion. What then? I can see nothing but the fear of the police, mere brute force, a noble religion, this truly. I congratulate you upon it, but I prefer my own. And so forth. Can a man who has treated some friend with ingratitude say to himself, I am a good man, I have nothing to reproach myself with? No, certainly. Well then, you, honest man, according to the world, are guilty of ingratitude toward God and forgetting Him. He is your Father, you owe to Him. You owe to Him your being, your life, your intelligence, your moral dignity, the health. You enjoy the goods of this world, all in fact. He has created the universe for you, for your use, for your enjoyment. He has Himself taught you His law. He has saved you. He prepares for you in heaven eternal happiness. He is your Lord, He is your Master. He gives you His blessing. He pardons you. He loves you. He waits for you. And what do you give Him in exchange? How much love, respect, homage? You coldly discuss the pretexts that have been invented by His enemies to withdraw you from His service, and so forth. Seventh objection: my religion is too good to others. Is to do good to others. Answer: nothing can be better. It is just what the Christian religion most pressingly commands us to do, even assimilating this duty to that higher and more fundamental one of loving God. Eighth objection: religion, instead of speaking so much of the life to come, ought rather to occupy itself with the present one and destroy its misery. Answer: religion speaks much of the life to come, because that life, being eternal, is of vast importance, and is much more worthy than the present life, that we should be occupied with it. It is there, in fact, that is to be decided forever the great question of happiness or misery on earth. We do but prepare its solution. But if she speaks a great deal of the life eternal, religion is far from neglecting the life of this present world. All the interests of man are present to her: his soul, his body, his transitory life, his future and unchangeable life. She forgets nothing. If she does not completely destroy the miseries of life, it is because those miseries cannot be destroyed. And they cannot be destroyed because the causes which produce them cannot be suppressed. Of these, the first is the inequality of physical strength, of bodily health, of talents, intelligence, and energies in men. If in consequence of an accident, or simply from the effect of old age, I lose the strength necessary for pursuing my trade or occupation, shall I not fall into misery? If in spite of all my efforts I am so unskillful as not to be able to work as well as my fellow workmen, will not my customers prefer to deal with those who excel me, and shall I not fall into misery? Yet who can guarantee us from sickness, accident, or old age? Who can give talent to those who have it not? Who can render all men equal in strength, and intellect, and willingness? See then here a fertile source of misery, and one which it is impossible even for religion to destroy. The second cause of human misery is not less profound than the first, arises from the very incidental to our feeble nature, corrupted by sin, idleness, licentiousness, drunkenness, inordinate love of pleasure, revenge, pride, etc. Among 100 poor persons, how many are unhappy through their own faults? 19 out of 20. They accuse heaven when they ought only to accuse themselves. The good poor soon find help. God and the faithful children of God never abandon them. Poverty, like sickness and death, is the punishment of sin. It is impossible to destroy it, for it is impossible to destroy original sin, which is an established fact, and to render man impeccable. But that which is possible, and which religion performs admirably, is to lessen misery, to relieve and soften its pangs, to render it supportable, and fine, to sanctify it. Religion reveres in the body the temple of that immortal soul, which is itself the living temple of God. She exerts herself to heal, to prevent even all these afflictions, by the numberless charitable institutions, the asylums of every kind which abound in the Christian world. Wherever her voice is listened to, the rich man becomes the friend, the brother, and often the servant of the poor. He pours forth joyfully his superfluity into the lap of the afflicted. The poor man in his turn learns to hope. He learns in the school of Jesus Christ to endure with patience, and sometimes he even attains so high as to love sufferings which he knows are destined in the adorable designs of his heavenly Father, to prove his fidelity, to purify him of his failings, to render him more like to his poor and crucified Saviour, and to lay upon for him ineffable treasures of happiness in the eternal country. How many good poor have I not seen thanking God for their sufferings and rejoicing in their privations? Religion therefore does just what she ought by occupying herself with her happiness in this life, but occupying herself a great deal more with the life to come. None have any cause to complain of religion. Let the rich become good Christians and consequently charitable, and the poor become good Christians and consequently patient and resigned. This is the secret of happiness. The kingdom of God is not meat and drink, but justice and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. Romans 14:17. It's got here, been there at 2,000 years. Okay. Ninth object, we ought to enjoy life. We must have a good time of it. God is too good to have created us for anything but happiness. Answer, oh yes, God in his goodness has created us only to make us happy. But the greatest point is not to misunderstand what happiness is. You seek happiness, you are right, but beware of deceiving yourself in the choice of your means for attaining it. Many roads lie open before you. One only is the right road. Woe be to him who takes the wrong one. It is a mistake more easy to make at the present day than ever, for never, I think, has our country been more inundated with lying doctrines on the subject. Wicked or deluded men diffused on all sides, and through the many channels which the press affords, doctrines which, flattering human passions, easily penetrate into the minds of the people. They would fain persuade us that we are placed here on earth only for the purpose of enjoyment, that all hopes of a future life are but chimeras, that happiness consists in material prosperity, in money, and the means of enjoyment which money can procure. Such is the doctrine of mere pleasure. It is a doctrine which it is at this moment striving to gain the mastery over Christianity and to materialize happiness. In the last century, it was called philosophy. In our times, it is called communism, socialism, etc. Footnote: the fundamental principle of these systems is the same. As regards morality, they differ only in some details of their application, by no means essential. This doctrine, as professed by the learned, is called pantheism. The morality of pantheism is the same as that of communism. It is communism talking Latin and dressed up as a pedagogue and a pedant. What about communism, defining communism and socialism, etc. And what are the effects of it and the consequences, I guess. 10th objection: the apostles and early Christians were communists. They were poor and had all things in common. They were pursued and hunted down by the civil authorities, just as communists are. Answer, or just as malefactors are, you might add, and that is enough to show you where your reasoning fails. And tell me, since when does it suffice to be poor, to have things in common, to be pursued and imprisoned in order to be a Christian? That which constitutes the Christian is not outward poverty, but a mind disengaged from the transitory goods of earth. It is not the bare material fact of having things in common, but the invisible ties of fraternal charity which makes of all hearts but one heart. Okay, so there's a footnote at the bottom here. Although this chapter is more applicable to the state of France than it is to America, it is not without great pertinence here too. The essential doctrine of the communists has many advocates on this side of the Atlantic. Objection. There are many learned men and people of mind who do not believe in religion. Answer. What is to be concluded from this, except that it is not enough to have profane learning or to possess talent in order to be a Christian and to receive from God the gift of faith, but that something more is required, namely a pure and upright heart, humble, well regulated, willing to make those sacrifices that the knowledge of truth imposes. Now, this is just what is wanting among those learned men, and they are few who are irreligious. First, either they are indifferent and ignorant in matters of religion, absorbed in their mathematical, astronomical, physical studies. They think neither of God nor of their soul, and hence it is not surprising that they know nothing of religion. In what concerns religion, they are ignorant, and their judgment on it is worth no more than that of a hod carrier about music and painting. There are some learned men who are more ignorant of religion than a child of 10 years old who is assiduous in learning his catechism. Or else, what happens oftener? They are haughty spirits who pursue to judge God, to argue with him as an equal, and to measure his word by the dimensions of their feeble reason. Pride is the profoundest in its malice of all these services. Therefore they are justly rejected as presumptuous minds and deprived of that light which is given only to simple and humble hearts. God does not love proud rebels. And so forth. Okay, there's many more questions asked throughout this book. I think we will end it. Hopefully you enjoyed that book. That brings some light to you when approached by atheists, trolls, etc., agnostics, the curious, etc., who have these questions. They pose these questions, wanting you to answer it. This will give you that knowledge, that mindset to answer the questions truthfully, honestly, and with great faith and conviction. So if you like this, please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, add your comments down below, and we'll get back to you on them as soon as possible. We much appreciate them because they help our channels to grow, and many are very interesting. And then go tell your friends, hey, your religious friends, Christians of many denominations, this is a great book. It gives you insight, teaches you how you can answer these kind of people who make rash statements, or these statements, or pose questions as a Christian believer wanting answers. Okay, thank you for your time and watching our video, taking the time to watch our video. Hope you really enjoyed it. We will see you on the next exciting video.